Hello, welcome to Conversations on the Couch with Dr. Danielle. Today we have a very special guest, one of my dear friends, and I'm so excited to have you all here so that we can get into a wonderful conversation. Welcome everyone to Conversations on the Couch. Today we have a very special guest, my dear friend Jade Sanders. Jade, if you'd be so kind to introduce yourself and just let us know who you are, that'd be wonderful.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Jade Sanders. I was born and raised in Richmond, Virginia. I got my PhD in clinical psychology at Delphi University. I graduated in 2020, so I am a 2020 grad. There was a lot going on, as you guys know, so still in the early career professional development phase. So what happened was I was in the middle of my internship year in 2020. And then I was able to go back home in Richmond and finish out my internship there. Thank God. So packed up my stuff in New York, moved back to Richmond, but then found a job in DC at Georgetown University, where I work with medical students and STEM grad students on mental health consultations, wellness programming, all of that. So I currently work in university counseling. I really enjoy working with young adults and professionals. So that's how I ended up there. So, yeah, that's me.
So you didn't mention this in your bio, but one of the things that I know about you is that you are really into music, right? I always see you on Instagram doing like those challenges, name a song for a particular theme every month. And I was like, music head, I need to talk to Jade about some of the things that I wanted to bring up today. So I was working out with my trainer, and he asked me, what I wanted to listen to as I was working out, and I said, play some Chris Brown, right? And he said, Chris Brown, and I said, yes, and because I already felt the discomfort coming up, and I said, yeah, the Robitussin song, because of course I can never remember what song it is.
And I still can't think of it. Oh my God. What is the name of that song? It's a good song though.
Yes, it'll come. And he said, well, if we're playing Chris Brown, can we play R. Kelly? And it was an immediate no. I was like, no, we can't. So then it struck me for a second, like, okay, well, if we can play Chris Brown, why can't we play R. Kelly? Why was there an immediate no for R. Kelly? And they're like, Chris Brown is, right? So it made me really want to sit and think about our celebrities and how we kind of treat some of them differently. Obviously, there's a difference between the types of things that each person did and severity, of course, right? But still, there's this like, it's okay for one person, it's not okay for the next. So I just wanted to have a conversation with you about some of these things. So we'll get into more of that. But are there any celebrities that you and the public maybe think are controversial, but you still kind of secretly, or maybe not so secretly, like them or rock with them?
I have to say, because
Was
it's like,
okay, I heard a, and I was like, "Ooh, is she gonna say yay? Were you about to say yay?"
So the thing, yes. So the thing about Kanye is, first of all, his music was already going downhill, but he's still a great producer. He makes great beats. And that's what I gravitate toward. I never stopped listening to his old music. No one, I don't think anyone has actually. And I think for me, the personal boundary is like okay, this person has different political views. That really doesn't matter to me. It's when he started, I guess he was manic at that moment, started talking about Harriet Tubman and slavery and stuff like that. That was weird. I was like, okay, this is a lot. Um, but I think as a clinician, I'm like, well, he was manic, so I think I was still able to kind of like distance myself from it. Like, yeah, I've been on an inpatient floor. It happens. Like people say really horrible things, and then when they're medicated, they don't remember it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I was immediately able to go there and not have as much disgust for him as I guess other people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also maybe Doja Cat. I never stopped listening to her. I know she said most of the things that came up about her was untrue, but I know she still kind of does things that people are like, this girl's a weirdo, but I still listen to her. I think she's very talented. Um, I still listen to Chris Brown. I'm from Virginia. He's from Virginia. This I think as Virginians, it's complicated for us. It's kind of like we grew up with this guy. He went to jail. He seemed like he was sorry, but I think when he started dating other women and he's still displaying this behavior, it is kind of hard to vouch for him. And his, what I will say is his music is very consistent. Like I feel like he'll make 20 songs of the same song on one album. And that was works with his fan base. And I think, yeah, I think Chris Brown, I think the thing is like, okay, he went to jail for what he did. He seems sorry, but I know there's substance use, allegedly. There's probably allegedly substance use and other disorders at play there as well. And so I think, again, as a clinician, I'm like, okay, well, he's not really in his right mind. He's probably never going to get better. Um, So yeah, Chris Brown, Doja, Kanye, I still listen to their music.
So you mentioned something really interesting around personal boundaries, right? And can you talk a little bit about how personal boundaries and which ones are crossed can have an impact on whether someone is given a pass or whether or not we're just like that person's canceled altogether?
Yeah, like I can start with my personal boundaries, like someone that's like a chronic abuser or just um someone who just has no regard for their life or others. So I think that's why it might be hard, for example, Diddy, who just apologized. But now, all these stories are coming out. There's no one defending him. They're just like, this man has abused several women. It's been in a relationship with Cassie for a decade, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just kind of like versus, maybe Chris Brown, like he got arrested for maybe one incident. We don't know how many times he's hit women, but far as the public knows, has only been like a one-off that he went to jail for. And I think redemption is also important. Like, has this person served time for what they did? Are they remorseful? Is there changed behavior? Then I might support them and be like, okay, they're trying to get their life back on track. I'll support them versus someone who tries to evade accountability or, just kind of restorative justice. Like, okay, I'm not going to jail for this, but because I've acted this way, I'm going to do this. And we don't really see that a lot. And that's probably why people are kind of like, I'm just, I'll listen to the music, but maybe going to a concert might be a boundary. Like, okay, if the song comes on the radio, I might listen. But a boundary is, concert tickets are $200, sometimes more than that. Yeah. And so that I think is most people's boundary. Like, okay, well, I'm not going to make a big deal about it, but I'm not going to go out of my way to spend hundreds of dollars supporting this person financially.
Mm-hmm.
So especially if you're listening to the music, but you're not streaming it, maybe somebody else is listening to it or you're at a party. So yeah, I think personal boundaries could be financial, and sometimes it could just be what they did. Like if someone has been in an abusive relationship, of course, they might not be able, and that's not everyone. Some people are just able to compartmentalize, like, okay, well, everyone's story is different. I'm still going to listen to this person.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it can be a range. So, any personal boundaries for you?
Yes and no. I I think I still kind of struggle with separation of the artist and the music, and whether or not there should be separation, right? There's still like that question of when you do decide that you're not listening to this person, what does that actually do? What
Do
service
yeah.
does that do, right? Is it a part of like the person's punishment, or is it just like you holding strong to your own personal values and that's important,
Mhm.
right? Um, yeah, I mean, I think, obviously I'm still listening to Chris Brown. I never wanted to go to any of his concerts anyway, so that's not a challenge for me. But I still listen to Chris Brown. Um, I'm not. I still love a bunch of R. Kelly songs, but like when they play at a party or something, I'm not dancing or singing like I might have in the past. And I
Mhm.
don't know if that's, and I think it's, important for me to sit with that, right? But I don't know if it's because of like the social aspect of it, right? What other people might think if I am, singing and dancing to his music, or if it's just like I just can't connect with it in the same ways. And I think it's leaning a lot more to the latter, right? Um, some of the things don't ring true anymore, not hearing it out, like I can't believe R. Kelly when he talks about love to me, because the my definition of love doesn't resonate with the things that he's done. So I think, um, yeah, personal boundaries, to come back to your original question, is around domestic violence in some ways, but again, it's just like that happened with Chris Brown, and then I'm like still listening to the music. So there is this cognitive dissonance that's happening for me, and I think for a lot of people too.
Yeah, I think you raised a good point about the lyrics. Like, I think my issue with R. Kelly is that some of the lyrics are suspicious. Like, my body, what is it? My body's telling me yes. I
Oh,
forgot what.
my body's telling me yes, but my mind's telling me no.
Yeah, and I was like, but why?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these things aren't aging well. Um, but we were singing it, in high school and in middle school, and not really fully understanding what it is. So I think we can definitely like go back and look at a lot of things and say, what what did they mean when they said this?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like ain't nothing wrong with a little bump and grind. It's like, well, yeah, but why? It's kind of like you didn't know, but he was singing about it.
yeah.
Seems like you're ready, and it's like, okay, you meet someone, but no, that's not the context you meant. You meant as in, oh, you're old enough for this, and it's like that wasn't. No, that's not. So I think that was my main issue. Because I think a lot of people said the same thing. They're just like, I can't, I listen to these songs knowing that he's actually talking to like a 12-year-old girl. Like that's like, it makes more sense in that context versus, oh, seems like you're ready. I just met you. Like, no, you're talking about a child.
Mm-hmm.
And then, even with the rappers, they're getting caught up now, but like we're dancing to, yeah, you shot this person, you caught a body, not really realizing like, yeah, this is a murderer. Someone, no regard for life, but like we're on the floor, we're making dances, we know we're bumping to the car, and then they're on trial, and it's like, oh, you actually did this. And I think that the disconnect there is not us not really believing these rappers. Like, you didn't shoot anybody.
Mm,
You didn't take someone away from their family. You didn't do
mm-hmm.
that. But they did. But like you, back to your point, how are we supposed to know that? You know?
Yeah. But I mean, I think, just to even bring it back to the cognitive dissonance, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want us to talk about like what psychological mechanisms might be involved in this not believing some of these things, even though there might be evidence right in front of us. Because for some people, despite all the documentaries and the trials and things, that there's still this really firm belief that this person didn't do these things, or that they are not as awful, or the behavior is not as awful as the media portrays it, right? So I think, if we can spend some time talking about cognitive dissonance, right, I think that that would be really, really helpful to kind of get a better sense of why this happens for folks, me, myself included, because I'll talk about how when it comes to Michael Jackson, the cognitive dissonance is strong.
I love Michael. The cognitive dissonance is strong. And I will say, I think it might have been less strong before people started making documentaries. Like, yeah, people make documentaries, but the fact that we can turn on Netflix and Hulu and just watch one, I think that also has made a major difference, because we don't know what we don't know. Everyone knew Michael Jackson was off, but then we compartmentalize again, and then people outside of the mental field, they're just like, okay, well, he's just a little weird. That doesn't have to translate to him being a predator. And then, I think what happens a lot of people is like, oh, you guys are crossing the lines, mistaking people with mental health issues with being predators. And it's just kind of like, well, no, there's documentaries, there's proof. But again, similar to R. Kelly, Michael Jackson was never prosecuted. And then, a lot, it's like the similar line of sketchy stuff is coming out. Like, oh, the parents might have done this, or the kids might have been coerced into saying something. So we actually still don't know what happened. But then when you ask a parent, but would you leave your child with Michael Jackson? And they would say no immediately. And I think that's the core of cognitive dissonance, where we will defend someone to our core, but, oh, well, would you have a sleepover? No, absolutely not. And that's how we can tell there's some cognitive dissonance going on. It's kind of like, I'm not sure if it happened, but I wouldn't take a chance on this person.
Right.
I'm not. And when it comes to Michael Jackson and who else is untouchable?
I mean, these days it feels like anybody can get touched.
Yeah, I can't think of anyone, because even with the Will Smith situation, I did not expect that reaction from the public. I was just kind of like, okay, he did something that was not smart. But the blowback behind that, I was just like, ooh, like, but is he going to recover from this? I think he will. But
I mean, Bad Boys 2, 3,
yeah, it's coming out. I think people will watch that. I think the last movie he was in did flop though, but I think it's because it was on Apple TV, and it was a slave movie, I heard.
I don't even know what that is, but
Exactly.
okay.
Exactly. It was horrible timing, but like you said, anyone can get touched. Michael Jackson, I don't think we're ever. I think Beyonce is probably the only other person who's at that level of fame. And I can't imagine something coming out about Beyonce that's going to ruin her career. So I don't know what the psychological mechanism behind people that famous. With, you don't even have to be a super fan to be like, well, Michael Jackson didn't do that.
Yeah. I mean, Beyonce and Michael Jackson are my faves, right? And, like I said, lots of cognitive dissonance. There's this like a bit of celebrity worship, I think, that comes up around those two in particular, and certainly, folks from different genres and who have different fan bases, where you can't even say anything without there being like some reaction, right? I know, like when people talk about Beyonce, I have to remind myself She doesn't know you. You are not personally friends with her. She's not your family. Like, relax. People can have an opinion, right? Um, but let's back up a little bit and let's give the folks a definition of what cognitive dissonance is in case they don't already know, right? So, my understanding is that cognitive dissonance is when you have like two beliefs, two thoughts that are not aligned with each other and seem pretty incongruent, misaligned, and that's where there's like this kind of friction and tension because they don't go well together. And that's the dissonance part. It's discordant, it's not in harmony. What would you say your understanding of cognitive dissonance is?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's talked about a lot in the political sense, where it's like you have two beliefs that's not going to serve your needs. It's like because you have these two beliefs, you know, the way you're moving forward in life is not going to, you're not going to get what you need because of your thought process. Like, I know, so I can use, for example, like there's some women that people are mad at. I think Erica Badu specifically, they're saying she's always supporting a guy as,
Oh,
as always supporting someone that's, not great. But this is also a woman, female empowerment, spirituality. And so those two things don't go together, right? Like, oh, you're supposed to embody this powerful woman, independence, but then you support abusers. And so, and in my head, I'm like, yeah, humans are complicated. She can do both of those. And so I think that's where cognitive dissonance kind of goes off the rails, where it's like, but can you have two beliefs and just be okay? Or are you inherently problematic because you have these two beliefs that don't go well together?
mm-hmm.
So that's what I've been thinking about. Like, why can't people have two beliefs that don't go well together?
Yeah. I mean, I like to operate from the and space of things rather than an or space. Um, and I can say I think that the way that um, Chris Brown treats or treated Rihanna and perhaps some of the other partners that he's had is one that I think is unacceptable, right? And I think that he makes great music,
Yeah.
good music, right? And I think that society doesn't really allow for the and a lot, right? There's an immediate cancellation. And then when there's a cancellation, there's no room for repair, right? There's no room to come back. And if you do come back, it does depend on what you've done, how long, who you did it to, or who was harmed or impacted. I think race plays a huge role, right? Gender plays a huge role. So we can, talk about the multiple intersectionalities that really have an impact on this.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that it's an even across the board thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think that there is this component of like the cognitive dissonance and like having turning a blind eye to certain things because I haven't watched any of the documentaries. I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. I don't need that kind of negative information energetically entering into me and my spirit, so I don't watch it. But that's also a part of the cognitive dissonance, right? Like I'm just gonna pretend that this thing doesn't exist. So I can totally understand why it's a thing and why we're having this conversation. But I think not a lot of people do actually have the conversation about it and just kind of get angry when another person isn't like, yeah, totally gonna cancel it, never watching the Cosby show again, never listening to Trapped in the Closet ever again, right? So I don't know. I think it's hard to draw a line in the sand and just say that's it, that we're never going to cross it. But also,
Yeah. And I get people's frustration. Like some people might be like, okay, I went through my entire life. I didn't beat anybody up. I didn't kill anybody. Why don't I have $1 million? So it's just kind of like, so when people be like, oh, this person was 19 or this person was a substance user, I get it. You can go through your entire life without doing any of that and still struggle. So I think that's also part of it where it's just kind of like, yes, people are flawed, but there are some people who kind of live these boring lives where they do everything they're supposed to do. And they're probably the most frustrated where it's like, I don't want to see a chronic abuser get a Grammy every year. So I think, it's sometimes people are projecting their own narratives of like, well, I did this, I did it this way. How come this person can't do it?
it's not fair,
Yeah,
right?
it's not fair. And I think that comes up a lot, whether it's politics, music, what's fair to people, what makes sense to people. And so some people are very black and white thinking. They're like, well, if you did this, you shouldn't be able to do this. And that's how some people think. And, I'm kind of sympathetic to that, where it's just kind of like, well, this happened to me when I was a child, but that didn't make me do this. So I don't understand why that person did that. And so, it can be tough, especially if you have trauma in your life and you're witnessing other celebrities just kind of be rewarded for, not being punished for it. You know,
Yeah,
yeah.
right. Um, I've read the stories about people hitting people with their cars and them not the person not making it, right? And they're still living life without the same, kind of punishments that, God forbid it was either me or you,
Right.
going through that. So there's definitely um, discrepancies in like how um, someone is viewed, and it depends on a whole bunch of factors, right? Socioeconomic status, fame, I think, are also aspects that impact that. Do you think that when it comes to like the Black community, that this cognitive dissonance or this struggle, conflict between like whether we should remain connected to this person, whether we should still support them in some way, do you think that that shows up more in the Black community, or is it just across the board?
I think, ignoring crimes or things that people did, I think that's across the board.
Mhm.
But as someone who did watch the documentaries, I think what stood out to me was when Black girls and Black women were being harmed, that's when there's all of a sudden a disconnect. As you can see, most of Cosby's victims were not Black, and everything got thrown at him. And so that's what a lot of women were picking up on and reacting to. Like, not to say that some people, not that people didn't care about the victims, but people were just kind of like, how come, where was all this, camaraderie and law enforcement when Black girls and women were being harmed by these other artists and celebrities?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think far as, the Me Too movement, that was pretty mostly white, but there's some women of color that spoke up, as we see a lot of celebrities were kind of overlooked over and over again. And I know sometimes that comes up when people be like, well, how come you guys don't talk about this exec or this exec? And people be like, okay, that exec is in jail. So what was your point? Like, we're trying to get this person in jail.
Mm-hmm.
But as a Nickelodeon documentary,
Oh,
that
boy.
just came out, that person, Dan Snyder, is not in jail.
Yeah.
So, there are some examples where some people do not get in trouble, and there were just so many people that could have said something and did nothing. And most of those victims were not people of color because they mainly got kicked off the shows. So
Mm-hmm.
their parents complaining.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's more so from what I hear, a lot of Black women feel like our community does not protect its women and girls, but I'm not sure if there is a community that does. So bad.
So let's talk a little bit about the mental health effects of having this cognitive dissonance, this conflict, when we're thinking about celebrities or family members or politicians or whomever, because I know there has to be some kind of mental health effect at play here.
Yeah, ever since the Me Too movement, like I feel like there's a lot of re-traumatizations or vicarious trauma, so you prefer that word, and that's just when you're seeing something play out on the news or on social media and it gives you flashbacks to something you have experienced or just that act, seeing that act or seeing these atrocities being played out, whether it's like evidence from court or someone leaking something.
Mm-hmm.
It can definitely cause nightmares. Some people have issues concentrating, especially like I know there was a mass shooting at I went to University of Virginia for undergrad. Where someone like shot the football players and I couldn't concentrate at work. So it could be something as subtle as that, or it can be something extreme as having night terrors or nightmares about, seeing Diddy hit Cassie in the hallway or hearing how this person racially threatened someone in a leaked videotape. And so seeing that every day, then everyone's reposting it, blogs are posting it, it's not really good to see that, especially if you are already a fan of this person. And so not only that, if cognitive dissonance, whether it's at play or not, that's a sense of loss for you. We love our music, we love, our favorite celebs. It's kind of like a good, getaway for us mentally. And so when you're taking that away, it can be definitely a sense of grief, a grieving process. Yeah, and I think another thing that we have to be careful of in regards to canceling people is kind of this black and white thinking, all or nothing thinking, where it's like, this person does this, they're trash. This person does this, they're trash. And of course, outside of the atrocities of rape and murder and things of that nature, someone could have said something that they probably didn't mean to say, or they meant it at that time, but they're remorseful. You know, um, just kind of being more careful, like canceling people or like cutting people out of your life, or just kind of making harsh judgments of people without giving them a chance to be remorseful and redemptive about what they did.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and I mean, even, I think that this could be a whole other episode around um, murderers and whether or not they deserve second chances and how the criminal justice system works in the first place, right? And like what the function of it is. So that could be a whole thing. So I think
yeah.
all of these things that you've brought up have been really nuanced, and certainly there's a lot of room to think about these
Mhm.
things on a deeper level for sure. Yeah. I know that just in general, like cognitive dissonance causes a feeling of discomfort, right? Like that tension, that discord between those opposing thoughts makes people feel uncomfortable, right? And that's why there's often like an attempt to do something about that discomfort. So it can cause some stress. It can, obviously impact relationships. Um, in another conversation that we've had around like 2020 elections and just how, um, or 2016 elections, like how things, you know, um, really got intense, right, for a lot of people, and
Yeah.
that created a lot of distress in folks and also in their relationships. So um, these things, they're not outside of the experience of mental health. Yeah. So what do we do with all this information? Where do we go from here? Like, bring us home, Jade.
Yeah, I think, one of my first thoughts when I see stuff like the Diddy apology, I'm like, does this person not have a PR strategist?
Okay.
Like Jonathan Majors, his lawyers, like, I think, if you're if you're in a field that requires fan base and audience, yes, there is going to be, you're going to have to kind of maintain an image. And I feel like when you commit a crime or when you do something that's not favorable, it's, you have to kind of show some type of remorse in action. I think everyone's tired of the Apple iPhone notepad apologies at this point. I think we're past that. We want some sort of action about, okay, you said you're sorry, but we don't really see that. You're on social media, you're on live, you're doing this, but we don't see the fact that the change behavior. And I think that's what people want to see. So that's mainly on the side of that's something celebrities can do. As far as the fan bases, kind of maintaining your boundaries, like we said at the beginning of the podcast. That way it's kind of like, okay, well, now you don't have any celebrities, any art to consume. You're just on an island by yourself because you've made so many cancellations or cutting people out because you don't really have, those boundaries. So I think just setting a boundary for yourself, especially financially, like, okay, I'm going to continue to enjoy music because that's what I need to get through my day. But maybe I won't attend a concert, or maybe I won't play this when I'm hosting a party. So, so much of the boundaries you were having. So I think setting a boundary versus being so black and white all the time might be more helpful going forward. And like consuming the media, watching your media consumption. Like you said, you don't do documentaries. And I think that might be best for a lot of people. Like if you do have complex trauma or excessive trauma history, I also don't really recommend consuming this media of just watching people telling their stories or watching a video of someone being attacked. I think you want to be more careful if you do have a history of trauma.
Yeah, all good notes, all good notes. You just never know what you're gonna come across. On social media, everything is just so acceptable now. And it's not just one person, before it might be a news outlet that would kind of bring that news to you, but it's, millions of people that might come across your For You page, right? So there's not always that room, but, obviously we're going to encourage people to take good care of themselves and as best as they can, right? So, yeah, I appreciate you dropping those words of wisdom for us.
No problem. Happy to talk about art, music, mental health, all that.
All your favorites. Yeah. So let's do rapid fire questions to wrap up our episode today. So I'm going to just say a question, first thing that comes to your mind, Jade. You'll let me know, right?
Okay.
What is your favorite catchphrase as a therapist?
My favorite catchphrase as a therapist is, so the first thing that came to my mind is, sometimes it gets worse before it gets better.
Hmm.
I haven't said it in a while, but for some reason that was the first thing that came to my mind.
And it's also very true. It's also very true. Yeah. A lot of people don't want to hear that piece. But
Yeah.
okay. A book, a podcast, a movie, or in your case, maybe a song that you always reference either in your personal life or in work or at work.
A podcast, a book. Oh, there's two podcasts I sometimes reference. Black Girls Heal. And I'm blanking on her name, but she's I think she's still a clinician, but she also does coaching for dating and therapy for Black girls.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Your go-to self-care technique.
Technique. I actually really like, in addition to music, I really like going to the movies. So I have the monthly movie pass where I could just kind of show up and go. And I'll watch a movie by myself, or sometimes I'll invite someone if I know it's something they're also excited about. So,
I think I went to the movies once last year, and that's probably like one of two times in the last 3 years. So that's, wow.
I understand why people don't like to go, but it's just something about some movies have to be seen on a big screen, and that's just
Okay.
Yeah, that's just my
Yeah.
theory about it. Yeah.
I think since the pandemic, I just haven't really been interested in going to the movies. So that's something to think about. Okay. All right. Last time you were kind to yourself, what was that?
Ooh,
Yeah.
so I was kind to myself. I so I got microblading done to my eyebrows, and the reason why I said this is because instead of always complaining about my appearance or freaking out or spiraling about it, I was like, I'm going to invest in myself, look this up, make sure I get someone that I trust and kind of do something that makes me feel good. And I've been really happy that I did that. That's like the first time I've thought about whatever, enhancing anything about my body in any way. I don't know why I had a block around it. Maybe I was just scared, or maybe I was just like, no, I need to be natural and do things the natural way. But I was like, no, I'm gonna do something that makes me happy. So yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. We don't do enough kind things to ourselves, for ourselves. And we always find a way, I think, to help and heal other people, but not necessarily pour some of that into ourselves. So I love that you did that for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So, last question is something or someone that always puts a smile on your face.
I'll have to say my mom.
Yeah.
So, and it's because she's so in tune. Like she can hear something wrong in my voice, and she'll be like, "Oh, what's wrong?"
Mhm.
Or she'll see it on my face, and so even if she might do it, say something to accept me, she always is able to make up for it. So I'm really thankful for having a close relationship with my mom.
Love it. Thank you so much, Jade.
No problem.
Wow. All right. That's a wrap. We did it.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for agreeing to be here with me. So, everyone, that is the conclusion of Conversations on the Couch with Dr. Danielle and today, Dr. Jade. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, or if you wanted to add to the discussion, don't let the conversation end here. Leave your comments down below and also like and subscribe for more content. All right. Thank you. Be well, everybody.
Bye.